Greetings and salutations, viewers. Welcome to another episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to you today with another episode of World End Economica, Episode 2, Part 9, I believe. So, we've met the full crew, we've talked to each of them a little bit, kind of gotten an idea of what to expect out of each of them in regards to this new financial endeavor. So how about we dive right back in and see where things go from here. Now, we're still stuck using the quick load system after this whole thing imploded on me. So, bear with me. Until we reached the church, neither of us spoke much at all. It seemed that Chris was too apprehensive to hold hands with a guy in public. I wasn't much for that either. Chris had been using the program Hagana developed for investing, but the data was just as shocking as Chris made it out to be. If someone, without any knowledge of it, were to look at this, it wouldn't look like anything more than rows of numbers. Ticker symbol, stock price, number of stocks, profit loss. If I were to condense it and summarize the data, it would be sufficient to just have the number of stocks and profit loss in two sections. Still, there was a hefty amount of data. Looking at the trading times, it went from a few seconds ago to, at most, 10 minutes after they then ended. Chris's method was typical program-based trading, employing a calculation capacity that far exceeded that of humans to gather up change. It looked like the ticker was just spitting out random data about stock prices and amounts being traded in the hundreds and thousands every day. But amongst all of that, there was one number that made some sense. That was the profit loss. Just by scrolling down, you could see the data in that column increase fascinatingly. By dragging down on the screen, it was easy to see that the profits were swelling up. Current value, plus 1,448,213 mools. Capital was 2 million mools from half a year ago. I thought I was off a digit, but the numbers were right. Of course, the money probably wasn't Chris's. Eleanor likely supplied it. Chris may have been a math whiz, but this was still a matter of entrusting 2 million mools to a 16-year-old girl. It was, just as Riza had said, this wasn't a game. Eleanor and the others were the real deal and were very serious about it. Also, by looking at these numbers, I understood how Chris was able to find the courage to take a bold leap forward. If I were to add her base yearly salary to 20% of the profits, then Chris would suddenly have the same income as the rest of the residents of the lunar surface. The money I barely managed to scrape together, trying to extend my hand to the ends of the world, didn't even come close. This was what happened when a driven genius who can skip grades and get into Lunar City University applied herself. If I was given 2 million mools back 4 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to do this well. The bigger things get, the tougher it was to motivate oneself. I learned that firsthand during the investment contest. To move something large, you needed a large tool. I was just then coming to realize how mediocre I was, while at the same time feeling a bit of affection for the oblivious Haru of 4 years ago. But I was not mortified. Instead, I was honestly enthralled by looking at the footprints Chris's abilities left in her path. Haru! Ah. What are you yelling at me for? I came to my senses when I was called out and looked up. I realized that the potato gnocchi I had in my chopsticks had fallen on the table. I am well aware that my face doesn't move, but it still grimaced as I picked the gnocchi back up and ate it. Simmered al dente in cream. Delicious. Oh, that sounds so good. This dinner probably came from Chris's cut of the donations. Back when it was me and Hagana, food was mostly from Riza's part-time job that she brought back with her. Haru! Oh. I couldn't ignore being scolded a second time. Understood. And what would be? When Riza asked me that, I shrugged my shoulders and answered, "Don't look while eating." Then turn it off. Riza said that bluntly after seeing that I hadn't given up, placing it nearby with the screen still on. This was how you taught manners to children, but I didn't feel like I was necessarily wrong. It was necessarily wrong for her to employ that method. Now. Because this data had rocked me hard, in a way I've forgotten about for these past 4 years. Like catnip to a cat. Fair enough. When Riza muttered that, Chris tilted her head with a fork stuck in her mouth instead of chopsticks. Chris, your fork! Ah. Still haven't gotten over that habit of sticking things in your mouth, it seems. I'm sorry. Cats, you see, they get intoxicated by a plant called catnip. You didn't know? Unless it's on a test, I usually don't know it. Oh, I'll bet you never had to take a test on modesty, but you've sure got it, so it's fine. Cats, you see, they get like this when you give them catnip. Riza motioned over to me with her chin as she ate a pickled olive. Ah! Why would you pickle an olive? Catnip is similar to this olive, actually. Cats glue their eyes to it if they see it. Drool just seeps out, really. Drooling all over, going meow, meow, purr, purr. You can't smack them on the head or pull their tail. Only thing you can do is snatch it away, like this. Hey! Riza snatched up the terminal I was glancing down at restlessly. My eyes chased after the terminal just like a cat would, and my sight finally dropped to Riza. I squirmed awkwardly as I ate the macaroni. He was like this on the way here as well. Huh. Chris looked at me, then regretfully gave a small nod. Seriously, even with how few cars there are on the lunar surface, you'd get into an accident. Riza sighed and I hung my head. Chris looked back and forth between me and Riza, and after hesitating a few moments, ended up asking, "Was it like this back then?" Riza glanced over at Chris, then looked at me with an icy glare that hovered somewhere between scornful and dejected. Then she answered, "Yeah, exactly like this. Actually, he was a disobedient little brat back then, completely full of himself. Every meal, even, he stuffed everything he could into that rude mouth of his. Then it was just like, yeah, I ate, yeah, I'm done. I got pretty sick of it." She's not wrong. Chris tried not to laugh, but a small chuckle escaped right at the end. She tried to cover it up by rubbing her nose. Boys never grow up. After that, she let out a big sigh. As I listened to the sound of tableware being washed, I was gazing at Chris's data, as per usual. I began looking deeper into the data, after understanding the general trend of the wildly dancing lines of numbers. The criteria for industry selection, value selection determination, and the most important, and that which caused the most trouble for Hagana, the sale time. It wasn't that Chris's investment data was amazing. Rather, it was very pleasant. Right before my eyes, I could watch everything running smoothly and say what I thought. Things I'd only been able to make out faintly before seemed like they were being struck by a spotlight, and even now it seemed like they could jump right out at me. I felt that 4 years ago, even though it was only briefly. Hagana and I saw heart to heart. We literally were eating and sleeping together, revealing everything we felt and thought. It couldn't have been my delusions. Except, there was a sheen to it now. The program that Chris was using had been polished to a shine. I supplied the iron, Hagana smithed it, and Chris had polished it. Just as Chris had said, there was a lot of influence from Hagana, of course. A number of the evaluation criteria, which seemed similar to how they'd been before, had come about via bickering with Hagana, and that had hard head of hers. Your meaning escapes me. Say it more clearly. Are you an idiot? It was almost as if I could hear those words from her even now. However, that's not what I felt from Chris's program. It wasn't Hagana's tone, specifically. It was just influenced by Hagana, showing only her awkwardness and immaturity. Chris saying it might be shocking may have just been her way of bragging. Confidence in being the next generation. I'd been flicking through the data a lot. Maybe that's why I felt a slight cramp in my right hand. It'd be nice. When I was spoken to unexpectedly, my gaze turned in the direction of the voice. It was Ryza, drying off her hands. Not that there was anyone else there. If you got over that bad habit. Bad habit? You're thinking about Hagana, aren't you? That bad habit of looking at your right hand. It's become a bad habit? Well, yeah. Also, when you look at your right hand, it doesn't feel like you're looking at your right hand. It's like you're looking at something bizarre, something horrifying. Like you're looking at something you can't control. It's easy to tell. That's the first time you've ever said that. Of course it is. Ryza gave a wry smile. When she finished drying her hand, she removed the cord that held back her sleeves of her habit, then sighed. Oh boy. It wasn't something I could really say. It would have been too harsh. Now is fine? Well, better now. As Ryza spoke, she opened the cupboard and rustled through it. She took out a brown bottle. 4 years ago, I only knew that it was alcohol, but by now, I had learned it was called brandy. Have a drink? I'm still a kid. So that's a yes. That spiteful remark was aimed at the me of 4 years ago and how I always aimed too high. I shrugged my shoulders, which caused Ryza to chuckle in delight. Don't need it. I know. Ryza put a small amount in her glass, then closed the bottle. Then, without even sitting in a chair, she gulped the whole thing down. That's not the sort of behavior I expect from a nun. Whew. Well, we're on the moon. You almost had me smiling there. Whoops. Went too hard. Ryza said that without a trace of feeling or emotion as she opened the bottle immediately, pouring more in than last time. I kid. This is just fine, actually. This liquor is to drink away the pain. Drink away the pain? Yep. A lamb so badly injured it couldn't even walk straight without my support, praise, and assistance was finally able to walk on its own feet again and left, you know. Enough of that. Seems like you'd forget in a heartbeat unless I reminded you. I ain't forgetting. When those words, which I'd said so often 4 years ago, came out of my mouth, it made me gasp. Ryza looked at me as I did that and lowered her eyelids affectionately.
I know, but when you're looking at that terminal, you look just like a little boy looking at a treasure map. If I were to go over there and give you a big hug, it feels like you'd say, "Shut up, let's go, Grandma." Or "Let go, Grandma," doesn't it?
Ryza was probably able to pick up how disdained my expression was beneath my emotionless face. Her shoulders were now shaking as she laughed. "But I might be open to lying on your lap." I said that just to strike back with something, and it caused Ryza to look surprised. Even so, as though guided by the law of inertia, a smile crept over her face. She then swirled the glass, even though there was no ice in it, and spoke as she looked into it.
You can lie in someone's lap whenever you come up with a reason, can't you?
Oh, you're right.
Sheesh, don't be so impressed by that. But it might be a bad idea to let you lie in my lap.
What?
I want to stay on good terms with Chris.
It truly felt like this time my face would shift out of disdain. The smile left Ryza's face suddenly as I looked at her. The eyes she looked at me with were piercing.
Didn't you notice?
What?
That thing you're looking at. It's Chris's investments, right?
The way Ryza spoke showed she still had no interest in it, but I nodded from the pressure.
Chris has been by your side that entire time you were fixated on it, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Did you see the look on her face?
I panicked upon being asked and searched through my memory, but came up with nothing.
Like, for example, Chris would be by your side, and every time you took a deep breath or shifted, she was waiting for it.
Waiting for what?
Waiting for it. Don't you understand?
No.
Honestly, listen, she was expecting to hear something from you like, "Wow," or "Whoa," or "No way."
I was dumbfounded. My gaze moved reflexively towards the bathroom, over to where Chris was taking a shower. She wasn't the type like Hagana who would go in and out of there naked without batting an eyelid, so it would probably be a while before she came back out.
Anyway, a word.
Yeah.
When she comes back out, you need to say something. Got it?
Yeah.
Honestly, just watching that was pulling at my heartstrings.
After voicing her complaint, she swirled the brandy again.
But, well, I'm really glad things are going well.
Things?
Looks like you're enjoying yourself.
I looked down at the terminal in my hand when Ryza said that. It's true. I was so terrified of the market, yet when tossed this data, even eating became a chore for me. But I was different from how I was 4 years ago. If I were to say I'd grown, then it would be this. Looking in from outside and being on the inside are different. If I still think things are fun when I'm putting money on the line, then I really will come here to thank you.
If it's not...
If it's not, well, then I want you to save me as I suffer. Praise me and support me.
Seems sort of pointless to look after you then.
Then it means I'll need to grow up. I took the glass from Ryza and drank a bit of the alcohol. I wasn't brought to Ryza's room to drink very often back 4 years ago, but I still just didn't like the intensity of hard liquor. It's just weird to think such harsh stuff is good.
Also gets you drunk.
You're completely that type, aren't you? When I said that, Ryza took the glass back from me and drank a bit of it. Then she dug into her bosom and pulled out her rosary.
The Lord bestows this ordeal upon me.
It'd be better if you didn't have it.
Think so?
Yeah, because not all people can shake off those demonic beckonings. Fair enough. My expressionlessness wasn't from the paralysis this time. I came by it honestly. I looked into her eyes, but, of course, Ryza didn't look away at all. The fact that she still had those soft, gentle eyes made me think she was incredible. Aww. Ryza extended her hand slightly, touching my bangs, then caressing my cheek.
By knowing that, you may really be able to save those tempted by the devil.
But I won't be saved. Hagana disappeared and couldn't be found. What if she came back? Thinking that raised my heart again after these 4 years, but the hand I wanted to hold wasn't there. The fact that I was projecting on Ryza wasn't anger, so much as me just wanting to be spoiled. Ryza knew this, too.
It's impossible as long as you believe you can't be.
She said these cold, forsaking words with a smile. It was at times like this that I really felt fortunate to have met Ryza. I'll take that to heart.
I'd love it if you'd take to heart the joy of proper table manners while you're at it.
Sorry. That's the only thing I didn't try to refute or joke about. Ryza flipped my bangs, then picked up the bottle of brandy and stood up.
But it isn't wrong.
Huh?
If one believes God does not exist, then even if he were to appear before you, then you wouldn't think it was him. In that sense, the world is formed around the desires of the individual. Those of faith find salvation. That is what those words mean. So even if it's true that Hagana isn't here, the world you see is completely different depending on whether or not you think she'll come back.
I couldn't even register it as being agonizing. Ryza.
What is it?
It's almost like you're a nun or something.
Well...
When Ryza glared, I showed that I was trying to give a little payback by rising up the corners of my mouth with my fingers. Ryza gave a sheesh as she stood up and put the liquor back up into the cupboard. As she did, the sound of a door opening could be heard from over towards the shower room. Chris came out, fluttering the twisted-up hem of her rather thin shirt, which was probably her pajamas, and recalled quickly that I was here. Frantically, she let go of her hem and wiped her face with her towel in a fluster.
Oh, you're still here.
Chris blurted out her excuse with a weak smile as Ryza, the manager of morality, slumped her shoulders in dejection. I was thinking I should be getting back. I could tell that Ryza was glancing over at me, but I certainly wasn't that stupid. There's something I wanted to ask.
What would that be?
It's improved upon quite amazingly. There's a lot I want you to teach me.
Of course.
Chris squealed with glee on her face that sparkled as brightly as her freshly washed golden hair. Just when Ryza was passing by her on the way to the entrance, she took that towel on Chris's shoulders and gently moved it to drop over her chest.
Before that, can you change?
Oh dear. This might be what she was used to wearing, but a thin shirt could never completely cover a blossoming woman. Chris went into a panic, not knowing what to do. She ended up dashing off to her room as Ryza instructed. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear.
Why are all the girls who come here like that, I wonder?
Isn't it because of you? She appeared quite subdued, but I did think Ryza wasn't really bothered by small stuff. I'd often seen her come out of the washroom, exposed shoulders, going to get a drink of water.
I want to refute that, but a few things come to mind.
I think it's great that they're like you, though.
Not bad.
Ryza pointed at me, then sighed, going to the door. Watching Ryza leave like that, Chris returned after having just thrown something on, not even wiping the sweat off from her shower. Hagana was like this 4 years ago as she was in the midst of writing the stock program. She'd jump out of the bathroom, not even caring if she were naked or not, if she came up with something. With that in mind, Chris was timid and easily ashamed. She was still classifiable as a sensible girl who was easy to get along with. Her frame was also a bit different from Hagana's delicate and malnourished form. The sweet aroma of soap from her freshly washed body filled the air, and it might have been from her damp hair, but her face looked more mature, and so attractive that it was hard to reconcile her appearance with that of her muscle-bound father. If only I hadn't met Hagana. I wasn't completely without those thoughts. But it's truly because Hagana was there that Chris thought of me like that. Turns out, one of the reasons was that she'd seen Hagana and me so engrossed in what we were doing. The world never ran that smoothly. Even now, as someone who'd gotten a little older, I'm open-minded enough to cover the naked truth. I'm off tomorrow. I won't be going back that soon, so you don't need to rush. As I said that, a droplet fell from Chris's bangs. She stared blankly for a moment, then laughed sheepishly. And I think this is actually a good spot to cut for this week. So, we seem to be slowly ramping things up, as is the style in World End Economica. There's a lot of build-up before plot points really kick off and climaxes occur. So, it seems like we're going all in on this, and the program seems to be working pretty well. Chris has been busy cleaning it up and streamlining things, but we really need Haru's skills and gut feeling to really make this thing grow. Hopefully, in the next episode or following few episodes, things really kick off and ramp up and get exciting. But until then, I'm going to bid you all farewell, and as always, go be creative. Go enjoy some stories that people have created. Go create stories of your own and share them with all of us so we can all have some fun. And I'll see you all next time.